and every one of you. Well, today for the master class we have with us Agnieszka Holland. So ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Ma'am Agnieszka. And at the same moment, I would like a bouquet to be presented to Ma'am. Polish film and TV director and screenwriter, best known for her political contributions to Polish cinema. Holland is one of Poland's most prominent filmmakers. Her film, Europa Europa, won the Golden Globe in 1991 for Best Foreign Language Film. So ladies and gentlemen, I think she deserves a huge round of applause. This year, the International Film Festival of India has organized a retrospective of some of her works. Ma'am, you can please take your seat. We are also privileged to have amongst us Mrs. Holland, long-time associate and award-winning film cinematographer, Mr. Jacek Petrycki. So another huge round of applause. Cinematographer specializing in feature films, documentaries, TV theatre. So I would present a bouquet to you, sir. And this session will be conducted by Mr. Anil Zankar, well-known writer, teacher and filmmaker. Mr. Zankar is also a part of the jury of the Indian Panorama at the IFFI 2013. So sir, I request you to please come forward and present the bouquet to sir. Well, we are blessed to have three wonderful guests amongst us. And before we start off with our masterclass, I would kindly to request each and every one of y'all to please switch off your mobile phones right now and try to restrain from using your mobile phones and have a good interaction session. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you so much. And without further ado, I start the session. But before I do that, our guests have already been welcomed, so I will not add to that. What I would like to do, and with their permission and your permission, I would like to speak for 5 minutes before I hand over the session to them. I promise you 5, may at the most stretch to 6 and 7, but not more. So with your permission, because I would like to put in the context of these two people. When I have always believed personally that the best introduction to any country is not through information or through Wikipedia, but through the arts of the country and the great artists. And these two, we have two filmmakers from Poland. And to me, my introduction to Poland happened through their films. And I still believe that it would have been the best possible introduction I could have had to the country through the work of some serious artists of that. And two of us, we are privileged to have them here. So before I come to them, let me sort of put this whole thing in context about Poland, Polish cinema. Particularly, some of you may know it's here, so please bear with me if it sounds repetitious. Now, Poland is a very, very small country, much smaller than us, but certainly not in terms of its contribution to world history, film history. Particularly, because for a country of this size to have produced so many master filmmakers is an outstanding achievement. And in the 70s, when my generation was getting hooked on to cinema, National Film Archives luckily was blessed to have some of the best collections of the then Polish, Czech, Hungarian, what we call as the East European. We've since been corrected by Mr. Danusi that we are Central European countries, socialist countries. And we had that opinion that time as film students that some of the best films in the world, along with Japan and Latin America, were being made in Poland, in these countries at that time. Even today, many of those films retain their charm because they're very, very universal and very appealing even after so many years. And these two people have been part of that process and a continuation of that process. And I think it's very important for us to realize that. Secondly, Poland, as I said, the saga of Poland has been a saga of resistance, among other things. It has had to find long battles. The Poles have had to fight long battles for their existence against various empires, and finally Germans, ran over the Nazis, and when the Nazis vacated, the Soviets walked in and imposed a system which was alien to them completely. From concentration camps, they went under socialist rule straight away. And in the 50s, when the Polish cinema started, the film school was devastated. And also to a lot of young people here, let me tell you that in socialist countries, everything was nationalized. People were on the paid salaries in those days. And everything was very, very minutely controlled by the state. The scripts, the light, the censorship was there at every prevalent state. Censorship was not like you finish the film and submit to censors. It was at all levels it was there. It was and the dominant doctrine in those days was the so-called socialist realism. And there is this infamous statement, I should say, of Stalin, of artists being the engineers of the soul. And you will find a reference to that in a lot of Polish films, including famous Man of Marble also. So these were the doctrines under which the Polish cinema was established by two, three major filmmakers of the 50s. Andrzej Wajda, whose film we saw 2 days ago, still active. Andrzej's Moon, unfortunately no more. Alexander Ford, then Jerzy Kowalewicz also started later on. In the 60s was the springing forth of the new generation, which we know very well in India. Zanussi, Kieślowski, Polanski, and recently we discovered Jan Kukolski 2 years ago in India. It was very well known recently in India. And it is against this background when the new realities from the 60s and 70s, a lot of different kind of films from socialist realism or the official doctrine were being made by these filmmakers. And since censorship and other things was rigid, all media was state controlled. Polish cinema had a very, very special place in people's listening because the films were one of the ways in which filmmakers communicated to the audiences. And rich ambiguities or statements which censors understood but could not object to. There are several films which were being made where under the allegory that something else was being communicated to the audiences, and the audiences and the filmmakers shared this very deep bond of making. So the experimentation and the various innovation in Polish cinema had a very definite agenda of belief and faith on the part of the filmmaker. It wasn't a luxurious kind of experimentation which resulted in a lot of innovation and other things in Polish cinema. Now, both these people, so it's from there we moved on to this generation, and that is the point at which both our guests entered the scene. And as she said in the press conference, which some of you may have attended today, she was privileged enough to be working under Andrzej Wajda, whom she considers as a mentor. Then she worked in this very brilliant film called Illumination by Mr. Zanussi. She was the assistant. She was just out of the film school at that time. And Krzysztof Kieślowski was a close friend of her, a lifelong close friend. I don't think you can have a better grooming in cinema than this. So she continues the tradition. This is where she comes from, apart from her training. In course of time, of course, she's gone on to forge her identity in different films, staying in exile in different kind of conditions, contributed to scripts in a variety of ways, etc., etc. And that's how we looking at her and looking at her retrospective. Mr. Petrycki, again, worked with on the documentaries of Mr. Kieślowski earlier on. He made several innovative documentaries till he was frustrated in documentaries and shifted to fiction. And the first film, which many of us know very well, is A Camera Buff or Amateur, has been shot by him. He's also done a lot of international work for Channel 4 and other things. So there's a wide variety of experience, and some of the statements of the documentary filmmakers, the kind of aesthetics which he was following at times became also controversial, and both of them have been controversial in the very positive and nicest sense of the word. Today when you use the word controversial, I'm using the word in the sense of artistic, aesthetic, political controversies. Because today the word controversial itself has become something else. So I'm not using it in that sense, but I'm using it in its original dignified sense, in which their careers have been controversial. So these are these various things that these people bring to the table, and this is the tradition, this is their individual as well as professional backgrounds from where they come to cinema and they come to us. So now I think it's time for me to hand this over, and unless you want to say something in reaction to this, or you would like you have a question. Of course, later on, it's going to be an interactive session after a few points, and you could ask basic questions. First, let's get rolling a little bit. After that, I think we'll throw it open for questions, because guests also want this to be an interactive session rather than then doing the presentation and questions coming at the end.
Thank you. Oh, it's loud. No, it's good. I just have to keep the distance. Thank you very much for your introduction. I have to tell that here in India, I met some of the most competent and thoughtful experts on Polish and Central European, if I will use Zanussi's expression, cinema. So it's a real pleasure to discuss with many people here, because they know exactly, so much about it that we can pass on the second level of the discussion. We are not discussing the basis. But I think that the audience here is not so expert on Polish cinema or Eastern European cinema or Central European cinema. And I want to be sure that our meeting today, which is quite short, is 1 hour, will be useful for both of us, for all of us. It means for you as well. It's why I think that I will welcome your questions in the first place, because it will show me what are the zones of the interest. I have quite long and complicated and complex film career, so it's why I can touch many topics about it. I decided to be a filmmaker when I was 15 in communist Poland, and one of the reasons was that I wanted absolutely to express myself in 3 areas. I was painting, so I wanted to make something like the visual art. I was telling the stories, and I consider myself as a kind of a storyteller. I was interested in the stories, not only literature, but also in the human stories. I was actually inventing the stories as well. Sometimes I was called mythomaniac, but I think it was creative mythomania. And the third thing, I wanted to have some power. It means I loved telling people what they have to do. And in private life, it's not very good. The political activity was impossible for me because the country wasn't free, and I didn't sympathize in this moment already with the communist regime. And I know that to become the politician, you have to submit your freedom and your freedom of opinion to the organizations, which is not democratic. So I thought the cinema will be actually the best thing. You can on the set, you are the real leader, and I can express my creative needs. And also cinema, when I decided, was probably the most exciting art. It was a real art, to me at least, and it was so many filmmakers who've been the artists and who've been the authors, who've been individuals, who expressed clearly what they wanted to tell. They've been looking for the new styles, new ways of expression. It was the waves of waves. It was the English angry cinema in this time, and it was the French New Wave. It was Czech New Wave, which was actually fantastic. Just before happened the Polish film school. And it was a lot of individuals, like, from India it was Rai, from Japan it was Kurosawa, Ozu, Mizoguchi, it was Bergman in Sweden. In Italy it was Fellini, Antonioni, Rossellini, Pasolini, plenty of people. In France it was to me the most inspiring in this time, Robert Bresson. In Poland it was Wajda, Munch, Kawalerowicz, Haas. And I thought that is the domain where I really can find, maybe if I will be working hard, I will find the way to express all what is interesting for me, and to, in the first place, to look for some kind of the truth, for some kind of the artistic truth, and for some kind of the truth of expression. I decided to go to the Czech film school, to Prague, for the reasons which are very complicated. I will not tell you my entire life. So 5 years I spent in Prague, in Czechoslovakia, in a very interesting period when, you know, it was the Prague Spring, the explosion of freedom, then the Soviet tanks, and then the very grim and sad period of the normalization when I was also in some way a victim of that. I was in prison and practically was unable to stay in this country longer, even if I married there. So I came back to Poland and I met my friends and masters, Wajda, Zanussi, Kieślowski, and we've been creating together something which was called the cinema of moral anxiety, but in reality it was some kind of the Polish New Wave. What was really interesting and original in this New Wave, that it went through the generations. It was the people like Wajda, who was born in 1925, then Zanussi, the next generation, then Kieślowski, closer to Zanussi, between Zanussi and me and my colleagues Falk, Kijowski, and others. And we've been collaborating on very strong basis. We've been really very solidary in some way. We've been helping each other, we've been criticizing each other, we've been defending each other in front of the censorship, and we've been fighting together against the authorities, the cultural authorities, political authorities, to allow to pass some bigger amount of the free speech through the movies. And what was also good is that the censorship was quite strong, but through the movies, because it wasn't some kind of the direct journalistic statement, but it was some kind of the creative recollection of the life and questions and inventions. We've been able to tell the things which was impossible to tell in a different way. And the audience was very smart. The audience was teached by the censorship, and the people been able to read under the lines. And the stylistic things like parable or metaphor was pretty easy for the regular audience. And our films, which you will see, or you've seen some of my movies of this time on this retrospectively, because there are three of my first movies which we did together with Jacek, Provincial Actors, The Fever, and The Woman Alone. You can see that they are not very, how to tell, funny movie. They are not extremely entertaining. But we had fantastic audience for them, also in terms of the box office, even if the authorities did nothing to help those movies to go to the theaters. Then I emigrated to France. I wasn't emigrated because I wanted to, but I was out of Poland when the Polish authorities imposed the martial law, and the country was cut from the world for a while. I gave some interviews, and after I was in some way banned, they took my passport and I was unable to come back to my country. So I was kind of desperate for a while, and then I started to think, if I can do something which will be interesting also for the people abroad, if I can work out of my country. It's always difficult, especially if you are connected to the social reality and political reality of your country, and cultural is only the thing you really know deeply. I think that paradoxically what helped me, it was these 5 years in Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia is close, but it's very different. It's like, I don't know, India and Thailand? I don't know exactly. Anyway, they are close, but in the same time they are quite far away in terms of the temperament, the culture. What is important in life for Poles is not important for Czechs, and the opposite. So it teaches me to look on the world in the different eyes. That is not necessarily what you think it is. It's true, but that you can also see through somebody's eyes and see it from different perspective. And it's what I try to do with my movies. I try to show the reality I'm presenting, which is my personally interesting for me, personally important to me, important enough to spend 2-3 years of my life with this story, but in the same time allow the different perspective into the story, the different access. So it's about me, like in general. After I made several movies in France, in Germany, one in UK, many in US, And with last 2 or 3 movies, I was coming back to my places, to Poland and to Czech Republic. And Burning Bush was shot in Czech Republic in Czech. And the movie before, which was here, I think last year, In Darkness, was shot in Poland, in Polish. But when I first time went to US with my German film, which was nominated for Academy Award, and I had the meeting with the Directors Guild, and they wanted to introduce me, and I introduced myself, and I said, my name is Holland, I am from Poland, I study in Czechoslovakia, I live in France, and I am showing you in Los Angeles my German movie.
What's coming to my mind is that my most beautiful period of my work was in the 70s, before Agnieszka left. That was the period of this Polish wave that was very strongly criticizing the reality. Not only the regime, not only the government and the party, but especially the social anyway, corruption and the relationship between people under the power. To be able to do these movies, we had to create our own language, which was very special and very metaphorical. And what I think, coming here, that probably nobody in the world is happy with his, totally happy with his relationship with the country and with this society. So what's really important in movie making is to tell the stories that are really important for the audience, and that are telling stories that the audience could feel that they are almost in my life. They are telling the story of my life. So I think that our meeting could be in some terms confronted with our experience of that period as well. Because then we spread for a long time, and I was doing completely different things. But eventually, 10 years ago, we met together again, and we did 2 films, but abroad.
I'll just take you up with you before I return to her. Since you started making documentaries first, and we've seen some of them, very different kind of documentaries you're working with, Mr. Kieślowski. And you shot Amateur, Camera Buff, the first one. And can you just take us through the process of how it was discovered? And later on, I believe there was some controversy. Some of these official people said that they had some objection to some of the shots that you took and some of the styles that you were doing, and the senior cameraman defended you, Polish cameraman. So it will be very interesting to have a first-hand account of the whole thing and the debate involved and the issues involved in that.
First of all, the connection between documentaries. We started to shoot documentaries at the beginning of 70s, and my dream was that I will be forever the documentary film cameraman. But what was really important, and what's also our experience, is that in Poland we were really very, very connected. All the society of the filmmakers who were doing this important wave of films, they were really working, as Agnieszka said, together, consulting their projects, consulting their cuts, and defending each other. So that was something unique that I didn't see in any other countries afterwards. When I finally went to England, I was completely surprised that the main filmmakers don't know each other even. So I was completely shocked, because in our country we were really very close, like a squad of people ready to fight. So we did these documentaries, and what was interesting that Kieślowski had a very special way of thinking about filmmaking, because when he started with documentaries, he had a big success as an artist, and also as a kind of social activist, because this documentary had a very big impact on reality. But at the end, because we went quite far with our research, with our stories, at the end he decided that he must leave documentaries at all, that he will not make documentaries anymore, because what he could do, he did, and the next step would intervene in that much in the life of the characters of the documentary that he wouldn't do it. So this is why he turned definitely to the feature films. But at the beginning we were following really the documentary style, even making our feature films, and the main commandment for us was that the film should look real, really real. It means it should look like life.
Well, you know, Jacek was very dogmatic, I have to say. So he so much wanted it to look like life that the movie wasn't accepted by the first film we did. Wasn't accepted by the technical committee. And his colleagues had to fight to prove that it can be dark, that it can be invisible, that it doesn't need to be, all lit and so on and so on.
Because this is real.
Because this is real. Sometimes he went a little too far. For example, we've been shooting only in the real locations, and mostly, especially when we've been shooting provincial actors, we picked the location real. It means exactly places where the people of the sky would live, and they've been extremely small. They've been so small that it was impossible to fit the actors, the camera, and we had huge camera, from 40s, and which was noisy, so we had to put like the cover on that, and second cover, and the coat, and so on. And squeeze between the bathroom and the fridge, it was so difficult that after making this film I started to feel really claustrophobic and wanted to make something bigger. So we did The Fever, where rooms, it wasn't contemporary film, it gave us some space. But also we decided that because we are living in the country which is not free, the people feel claustrophobic, and then we frame our close-ups like that, always cutting the head. Unfortunately now, those movies, I don't know how it will be here, but on the most of my retrospectives, they don't have the possibility to show this format we've been shooting in. Yeah, Academy, 3 and 4. So when I once in New York came to the theater I think in MoMA, they've been screening provincial actors, I've seen that all close-ups are cut like that. So you don't see the people's eyes. And I talked to one American critic who developed some kind of a theory about it, that it's some kind of avant-garde, that we are not showing people's eyes. So, anyway, I think that we'll open to the audience, right? Yeah, if you have any questions.
Yes, I would. Is there a mic on the floor?
Yeah.
You mentioned that you went back to Poland to do In Darkness. There are two sides to my question.
In Darkness reminds us of Vaida's Canal. Was there a direct link about it, and or were you inspired because of your work with Vaida in any way? Was this a homage to him? And the other thing is,